Good morning, everybody. It's another Wednesday here at the Video Lowdown. Welcome to episode 8. I can't believe we're 2 months in already with the Video Lowdown. Thanks everyone so much for tuning in every week and supporting the podcast so far. So today we have a guest. She is a communications expert. She's been in the game even since before video was even a thing. So I think we're going to have some real interesting stories today about how our guest has seen the evolution of video in communications. She knows a thing or two about moving with the times and creating a really successful communication strategy, whether it's you're an individual talking to your followers or your audience, or if you're a global company talking to your followers, clients, and also your audience. So today she's a colleague of mine as well. I'm really happy to talk to Sandra today. Sandra, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for that really amazing intro. Makes me sound like I know what I'm talking about. So let's hope I don't praise myself.
I think you do know what you're talking about. I think we've got some really interesting stuff to talk about today. Obviously, we work together, and it's a pleasure for me as a video producer to be working with somebody that is so passionate about communications and somebody that's passionate about being able to help clients and help people tell their story through that communication from a business to a client or an individual to their audience. I mentioned there, Sandra, about that you've been in the comms game since before video began.
Is that like, when talkies were a thing and it was all black and white?
Yeah, not that far back. We're not talking about the 20s.
Yeah, no, definitely after that. No, film video has definitely always been around. It's the accessibility of it. And I think when I started I've worked in agencies now for 30 years. Video, film wasn't accessible like it is now. And what I've seen over my working life is how that's now become part of the communications landscape. And it's given us, a whole range of more tools when we're communicating with an audience that we didn't have, sort of 20, 30 years ago. Film was definitely around. It was a thing. However, it was, mainly the preserve of, say, like the advertising industry. And you needed big budgets. If you were going to do any kind of communications video, be it for training, for product information, or advertising, any kind of marketing, this was the late 80s. It was, the big money was being spent on film. And that put it out of the reach in terms of a communication medium for a lot of people. Certainly when you were talking about how you were going to communicate with your employees. Or perhaps channel. Unless you had the big bucks and it was very much above the line advertising, then but I saw that started to change with video becoming very much more for a medium for training and used with that. And then, I can remember when I first started, I started working for a pharmaceutical company, and they had their own in-house studio and an edit suite. Now, to make product films that then these medical reps would lug portable televisions, which were the size of a suitcase, to show these video cassettes to, doctors and medical people. So, it was incredibly expensive to do anything like that. You look at how you edit film now. You would have had to hire an edit suite, which would have cost you thousands. So,
well, it's so throwaway now as well, which it wasn't then. It's really throwaway now because everything's digital, everything's done online with backups of recordings, everything's digital. There's no tangible, apart from the kit that you used to film on, there's no the files themselves, and the deliverable is not a tangible thing, whereas it once was.
Well, even the kit you film it on, I mean, to lug a camera around, you'd have to be built like you, and 3 or 4 three or four strong guys. Whereas you and I know we've worked on projects where, off I've gone using something the size of a, cigarette lighter plugged into the side of my phone, 4K, fantastic quality, rock steady, and you can't believe it's a camera.
No.
So everything, like everything, technology's got smaller, it's got more accessible, it's got more user friendly. Now kids have grown up with video. Video is something they use for everything. I mean, YouTube
Yeah,
is their search engine. You
absolutely.
want
Yeah,
to,
yeah, it
if you
is.
want to know how
Yeah,
to do something, you look on YouTube, and there'll be a video about it. Anything, literally.
yeah,
So I think, the change I've seen over the last 30 years is the accessibility, the affordability, and the fact it now video, it pervades everything. Look at the rise of TikTok. Video, even my 84-year-old mother uses WhatsApp video calling, and
oh god, I thought you were going to
uh,
say TikTok. I was
no,
like, let's
oh
look her
god,
up.
no.
See some of those dances going on.
Yeah, won't put it past her, but no. So, and I think that's changed the landscape for us in terms of how we communicate, especially in our business when it comes to events,
Mm,
because it's given us an opportunity to deliver our messaging and content for events in a lot more creative way.
sure, sure. Fantastic history there, Sandra, and it must be amazing to have seen. No, no, for real, like to actually have seen that development of I in the late 80s I was still having my nightly bottle, so it's different for me. I've come into video at a time
Thanks,
when,
Jamie.
I mean, it was like maybe 10. I don't know. I started in video around kind of well, I was at university 2005, so I got into it professionally around 2010, 2011. So say 10 years ago, and even then you were still filming on tapes.
Yeah.
DSLRs were a fairly new way to record, 1080p HD. So what you're saying there about accessibility and affordability, does that mean that although the entry level then has dropped in terms of those things for people to use video as a communication tool, does that mean that have ideas become more lazy, or have they become better in your opinion, in terms of people can just throw 500 quid at a camera and go, well, I can just film stuff now? Does that make, in your experience,
Yeah.
have you seen a drop in quality, or has that stayed fairly consistent from the early days?
No, I think what we've seen is we've seen, because video has become such a popular medium. We've seen far more professionals coming into that as a line of work. So 20, 30 years ago, very specialist area. Now it's something, like you said, you've come out of school, you've gone to uni, it's something you wanted to do, and got involved in. So I
Mm,
think although it's accessible and anybody can film something on their phone and anybody can upload something, I think from a professional perspective, in terms of what we do as part of a communications campaign or part of an event, it still needs as much care and attention as it did back in the day when you were filming on video, when you had to sit in an
mm,
edit suite, when it was actually on tape. It's I don't think it matters what media you use, it's how you use it and what story you're trying to tell. So, you've always got to start with what is it that who is your audience and what is it you're trying to communicate.
for
So
sure.
I think you can't get away from the fundamentals. Um, and while it's accessible and anyone can take anyone can shoot video, that's not necessarily good content.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right, and I think a lot of the people that like you said, the rise in kind of Snapchat, TikTok, Vine, those sorts of platforms, they're not created for, they're social platforms, aren't they? They're not created
Yeah,
for the business owner. Although people like Gary Vee, who are kind of absolutely champion platforms like TikTok as a business owner, to say get yourself out there, put yourself in a different, more human light, connect with your audience and your followers in a different way. I think that's fair enough if that's relevant to your strategy. So obviously
it
that
depends
works.
on your audience, Jamie. I
Yeah,
mean,
it does. It does.
it's always horses for courses, and I always say this when I talk to a client: you have to start with the audience. There's no point in saying, actually, I've got um, a, a Gen X audience, born 1965. I'm going to stick it on TikTok. Or do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's why if you watch any TV in the middle of an afternoon, you stick on ITV3 or Drama or one of those channels, you look at the advertising, and the profile, it's all mobility scooters, death plans, funeral plans,
Life
you know,
insurance, yeah,
life
absolutely.
insurance, how to pay for your funeral, because
Yeah.
you're dealing with a certain demographic, and those are very kind of gentle, you know, simple type of adverts, films that they've created, because it's tailored to that audience. Now, if you're looking at your, you know, your Gen Zs, your 20-year-olds, your 18-year-olds, or younger, then yes, certain social media platforms, that's where they are.
Mm.
You've got to deliver your message where your audience is. So
Yes.
when you're putting together a communication strategy, whether that's for your own personal brand or a business, you've got to understand, you know, who's your audience, who are you selling to, who are you trying to talk to, and where are they? So, you know, it's Facebook might not be appropriate for the line of business you're in. LinkedIn is.
Yes. Yeah.
So again, your use of film in the same way, you would craft your message using video in a specific way. You know, there's no point in having flashing lights, fast edits, you know, hip hop, if you're marketing to somebody in their 60s, probably 70s. You
Mm.
know, those are generalizations, but again, it's the appropriate media, the appropriate messaging, appropriate use of video for what the content is and who your audience is. You've always got to start with your audience.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. So thinking with the end goal in mind. So as a video producer, I'm always thinking about what is the video going to be used for, and where is it going to be used for. Once you've nailed those two things, you can work backwards on the creative strategy, the platform that it's going to be distributed on, and obviously video forms part of the overall communications campaign. So from your experience, Sandra, when you say that you work in communications, are you then like what just tell us a little bit about specifically what it is that you do and work with, that you do with a client when you're mapping out a strategy, a communication strategy. How does that process work for you?
Um, well, it's starting with talking to the client and understanding what the project is. And so if I take what we do in events
Mm.
as an example, so whether that's if it's a live event like a conference, for example, or a product launch, something like that, with business content, it's you start with the why. Why are you bringing these people together? Why are you doing that event? What's the objective? What is it you're trying to communicate? Because for me, um, events in whatever form they take are all another form of communication. You're bringing people together to share a
Yeah.
message. There are other aspects around that. It's the shared experience. It's, you know, it's motivational. It's exciting. People connect on a human level. So for me, you're never going to get away from that magic of a live event, a live
Yeah.
show. It's something that you know, you don't get in any other experience. So it's understanding what the purpose is. You always start with the why,
Mm-hmm.
and who your audience is, as I've said. But then it's what the messaging is. What what are they? What do you need them to know?
Yep.
What do you? What calls to action are there? What do you need them to do?
Yeah.
Um,
Important on
and
that. Yeah.
yeah, so you know, is it pre-event? So when we look at communication strategy, it goes through three phases for an event. You would look at pre-event, and that could be raising awareness of the event, when it's going to be, where it's going to be, what you need people to do to attend.
Mm.
Do they need to qualify? Do they need to register? Driving them to, you know, complete those actions in terms of signing up or you know, improving performance, whatever it is. Teasing them, engaging them in terms of getting them excited about the event. It could be you want them to contribute, and that could be through finding out what's important to them, because as a client, as a business, you might have certain objectives that you want to deliver through an event. You know, you need to communicate X, Y, and Z about your business strategy. For the people attending, they might have different objectives. It might
Yeah.
be they
Okay.
might be there because they have burning questions. They may need to understand something about the strategy. They might want to network with people. So it's a balance, and sometimes I think people in events forget that, and it's all about, well, this is the message we want to push out. But far more these days, it has to be two-way communication. So part of your communication strategy has to be understanding the audience, understanding what they want from the experience, and listening to them. So you have to make communication two-way. So that's your sort of pre-event in a nutshell. And then communication on site. So the whole experience, the look and feel, every touch point, that's all communication. The branding, the environment, and then the actual message delivery. So, that could be through the content, through presentations, through workshops, using video in all of that. And then post-event, again, it could be sharing that experience with people who weren't there, reminding people, giving people access to the content that they saw on the day to be able to then cascade that out. And again, video is really important at every stage of that. And that's the big sea change over the years has been, we can now use video to engage people beforehand, to help deliver the messages during, and to share the message on afterwards. I mean, you and I well know, how many highlights videos do we do? Or interview people on site that we then that we then share afterwards. And that also can be used to drive excitement and engagement for the next event.
Yes, absolutely.
It's slightly different in our game when we're talking about incentives, perhaps because what you're actually trying to do is motivate people to change their behaviour. You want them to, whatever the incentive is around, whether it's, and quite often it's driving sales and performance. So you're trying to entice them and excite them with the carrot that you're dangling. And again, nothing better than video to help do that. I mean, I could tell you about how wonderful it is to travel to, Malta, just to pick my own home country, and how, what a great destination it is. And, it's, the food's good and the people are lovely and all the rest of it. I can show you a 30-second video that's full of colour and movement and life. And that is going to create a far more impactful emotional response from an audience. So, video is an integral part of any communication campaign. And, you have to think about what the messages are, who your audience is, and then craft that as a journey. And it should be a journey, and it should be continuous. And you should have the right tone of voice to communicate with that audience in a way that is most appealing to them. So it's about, again, going back to my analogy with your mid-afternoon advertising. It's targeted, and they speak to them in a way that is comforting and understandable and so on. And that's exactly what you do in any communication. You understand your audience, and then you layer the communication throughout. So it's a continuous tone of voice, an established look and feel. They recognize it when they see it as it's part of your event. And it takes them on a journey. And that's the important thing about communication. It has to be an end-to-end experience. It's not just chucking out random bits of information. It has to be a joined-up strategy.
Yeah, and that's the key word, isn't it? Having the strategy there. So you could say then that you're kept quite busy.
Yes.
To put it in a nutshell, to condense all of that, you're quite busy.
It's interesting, and no two jobs are the same, because you could be working on an incentive strategy for a client, and how are you going to motivate people, how are you going to drive their performance over a 12-month period, and that's very different from, it is. And how do you keep them engaged, and how do you keep them motivated? And that's all to do with showing them what they've got to do, how they're doing against those objectives, and what the gap is to get them to be a winner. So it's all about measurement, reporting, improvement, and it's a continuous loop. And that's very different from looking at a company conference, for argument's sake, where you've got some difficult business messages to deliver to your employees or your channel. And again, that's very different from other clients I work with, where they're doing maybe an event that their channel has to pay to attend. So that gives you a whole different set of challenges in terms of your marketing and your messaging to drive ticket sales. So, it's very different depending on what the client is, what the project is, in
Yeah.
the meetings and events industry. And of course, that's changed again now in the last 3 months because, as you well know, most of us have had to pivot to virtual, and that
That's right.
presents a whole different set of challenges.
Yes, indeed it does. We'll definitely come on to that shortly because it is definitely of the times, and it's quite a pressing matter for our industry in particular. Many industries, but obviously the events industry is being hit very, very hard. One thing I wanted to pick out from what you just said there, Sandra, was the emotional response. Now, I love video because of the emotional response, because the auditory, the verbal, the sight, everything that you can see and hear, can get you here. It can get you up here, and you can evoke those sorts of emotions. Now, I think other forms of communication can do that, but I am heavily biased towards video because I love it, and I think that is the master of all communication tools. But I would say that. So all media does it, but I would say that video does that above, kind of above and beyond. Why do you think that is? Like, I know I've said about, you can hear it, you can see it, but I don't know, like, I just feel like when you see the video, when you see that 30-second incentive video with the music that's relevant to the destination, and you see the shots and the slow-mo and the colors, and why does that give us, why do you think that gives us such a, and why does it hit us in the feels? Why does it give us such an emotional impact?
I think it's because we're very visual creatures, human beings, and I think our attention span has become shorter, and we are bombarded with imagery and messaging in a way that we weren't, 20 years ago, probably, or even less. And I think the thing about video is it makes such an instant impact.
Yeah.
You're not having to read through things. And don't get me wrong, because I absolutely love the written word. I love
Yeah,
copywriting.
same.
It's just,
Yeah.
um, uh, I love losing myself in a good story. But we don't have the luxury of time when we are communicating with an audience these days. So I think that you have to make an impact. Visually is best, because if you show something to someone, they remember it and they have an instant reaction to it, be that good or bad. And it's that mix of senses, as you say. It's the layering of the music, the visual, the messaging. I watched a really impactful movie, short film the other day about diversity and inclusion, and it changed actually what I thought that meant, because it showed me very simply, with people just holding up messages about things that they'd faced.
Yeah.
And it made me think, and it caught my attention, and it was a very simple, very, very simple storyline, very, put across really well, lovely production values, beautifully shot, but it was really pared back and simple. And that made it so impactful. And you were hooked. And I think they say now you've got something like 8 seconds to make an impact before people will click,
Yeah.
swipe, scroll
Yeah. away.
So I think the thing
Even
about
that seems
video,
long, doesn't it? That seems a long time,
well,
8 seconds.
yes, it
I
probably
dare
does.
say it's probably even shorter. But
Yeah, you're probably right. But I think, um, hitting people with that whole sound, sight, imagery, everything in a package, you capture them far quicker than if you've given them something to read or
yeah.
just a static image. So yeah, I love video for that reason. I really do. Like you, I'm a huge fan of it. I don't think we create many communication programs now where we don't include video at some level, whether that's to deliver a content during, whether it's to excite people. And the other lovely thing about it is that you can put people on the screen now. That that used to be, everything used to have to be very carefully scripted, and you use professionals and what have you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now, I mean, look at us. we're on screen.
Bloody amateurs.
I know. They let anybody on. I think that's been you said earlier about talking about the situation we find ourselves in now. And I think that's been a really interesting use of video, how advertising and marketing has absolutely embraced that, using companies' own people,
Yes.
and making it about that personal connection in a way they haven't done previously. Because we've all been in this lockdown situation, we've all been deprived of human contact to, a greater or lesser extent. And all of a sudden now on our screens, we're seeing people who work on, the fish counter at Sainsbury's. You're seeing the person who's behind the counter at the bank, who works in the call
Yeah.
centre, who's the delivery driver, who works in the Amazon warehouse. All of a sudden, companies' employees, that human aspect is front and centre. And
Yeah.
I think in that way it's answering a need where we've been deprived of human contact, and here we are having that used as part of the communication, and again delivered through film.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think film has the ability to make us feel emotionally in a way that most media, other than live experience, I would say,
Yeah.
does.
So, Sandra, you said that obviously nothing beats the live experience, and I would agree with you, having obviously been on many events with you, and filming and operating a video crew and all that kind of stuff. The situation we're in at the moment, the situation that the events industry finds itself in, we've seen a lot of, BCD included, have really kind of stepped up that whole virtual offering and the ability to still be able to present your event through video, using presenters, using, green screen, virtual studios, through a connection, and then go out to its delegates. What considerations do you have to think about as the lady in communications, as we'll now call you? What considerations moving for when you remove that face to face interaction completely, which is one of the biggest benefits of working in events and holding events? How do you have to alter your communication strategy in order to still meet the needs of the client, still meet the needs of the people who will be virtually attending? How do you it must be a lot harder to maintain that positive communication and that need.
Yeah, I mean, our industry, the event meetings and events industry, was the first out and will be the last back after this pandemic. It's crippled a lot of companies, and
Yeah.
it's really serious. And I mean, and when I say events, I'm talking about everything from what we do in the corporate world to, entertainment, festivals, theatre, you
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
all of that has stopped, and it will be the last to come back. And that's really serious. What we have been able to do for our clients is, because businesses still need to carry on and they still need to carry on communicating.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, we have shifted our focus to virtual, because in the current climate, it's the only guaranteed way of delivering a message.
Yeah.
Until we have a better idea of what will be safe to do in the future and what audiences will be comfortable and confident to do in the future. So it's not just about when the regulations say we can meet again, it's also about audience confidence.
Yeah, of course it is.
And,
Absolutely.
if you say, well, it's fine, we can get 50 people together for a meeting, are those people going to be like, yeah, but,
Will they
really?
come? Yeah.
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 So that's part of it. The challenge with communications around virtual is that you don't know what you're competing with for people's attention. With a live event, you've got a captive audience. They are
Yeah.
in a room, a meeting room, a hotel, a venue, big meeting space, whatever. But they're captive. You've got them. You're on stage. You can put on a hell of a show. We can use video, special effects, entertainment, engagement, audience participation, breakouts, whatever it is. We have got a whole raft of engagement tools to communicate our message and to keep people interested, and participating. When you move into the virtual world, and they're sat at home like I am now, like you are, you don't know what else is competing for their attention. I could have the dogs scratching at the door, the phone's ringing, the doorbell's going, the guy from Amazon's delivering yet another damn parcel.
Yeah.
You know, my internet goes wobbly. You know, my phone starts buzzing. I'm thinking about that deadline. I have got another proposal to write. You know, are you doing a bit of this on the side? So you've got to cut through all of that. And the mistake I think some people make is that they think you can take what you were going to do in a live situation.
Yeah.
So here's my presentation. I was going to talk for 40 minutes about, you know, the future of cake making or whatever it is.
Sounds good.
And yeah, I'd watch it. You can't do that in a virtual environment. We talked earlier about people's attention span.
Yeah.
You don't have the same luxury of time when you're doing something virtually than you do in a live environment. So you have to consider your message delivery. It has to be really much more succinct, much shorter segments. You know, you cannot do a full day sitting at a desk staring at a screen.
No, absolutely
whereas you
not.
could have done if you were attending a live event. So, you know, you have to think about that. You have to think about how you're going to engage the audience. You're going to have to think about how you make things interactive, even though they're in a remote environment. How do you create a shared experience? You know, and there's a lot of people really stepping up on this now and creating entertainment and using technology to make it interactive. So people, you know, you can do a Q&A, you can do polling, you can add some gamification to it. You know, so it is a different beast. It really is. And you can't just go, well, that's fine, I'll do my presentation online to 400 people and it will be absolutely, you know, as it would as if I was standing on a stage. Very different skill set. And also presenting to camera, you know. I recently wrote an article about this and talked about, you know, presenting to camera is a different skill, especially when you have no audience reaction and no feedback.
Yeah.
If you're used to being on stage, you know, you could get up on stage in front of 500 people, knock it out the park, Mr. Charisma, you know, really, really land your messaging, use humor, get that immediate response from the audience. You know, you can feel the emotion in the room, you can make eye contact. When you're presenting, you know, virtually from a studio, you have no idea what your audience is doing or feeling. You can't see them. So, you know, it's why your breakfast TV presenters get paid the big bucks. Do you know what I mean? They're professionals. They present to camera. They know how to do it. And we've had to do a lot of coaching and rehearsal time with people.
Of course.
With virtual events to actually, you know, get them framed properly, to create the right backgrounds, to take them through how the technology works, how you hand off when you've got somebody in, you know, Munich and somebody in New York who are co-presenting. You know, there's lots of challenges. So yes, it has to be more succinct. You have to think about what is competing for your audience's attention, and you have to engage people. So again, very important to get their buy-in early, get them to participate. Your communication strategy has to make them feel that this is of value to them and it's speaking to them and that it's something they want to be a part of. And then how your communication happens through the event. Again, interaction, keep it engaging. Don't waffle on like I'm doing.
This is your platform to waffle, Sandra. It's fine.
I'm just conscious of the time.
No, not at all. No, don't worry at all. It's all really, really interesting stuff. And I think it's really interesting what you say about the presenting to camera. Like, you can be sat at an event and obviously the presenter can be moving on the stage left to right. They might have little quirks, little ticks that you probably don't notice because you're taking in the whole of the event as a delegate or as a consumer. But if you just pop them in front of a camera to stay still, these things start to kind of show show through on camera, don't they? That the cameras pick up every
Absolutely.
little nuance, which being able to transition from naturally presenting on stage to then being able to do it on camera is a different skill set. And I think a lot of people, in my experience, I found people who are very, very confident go, yeah, it'd be fine, I could do it, it's fine. Actually, then get in front of the camera and go, yeah, I don't know, I'm not really sure, but I'm not sure, maybe we'll just do it a few more times. And then the opposite of that is then the people that go, yeah, oh God, I'm feeling it, I'm not really sure about this. And then you get them on camera and you go, bingo, first take, job done. It's the whole psychology thing, isn't it? It's very interesting.
We've done it when we've interviewed people, haven't we? Where we've been we've been at a live event and we've interviewed people, and you've had exactly that. You've had people, you stand in front of the camera and they go, what do you want me to say? Yeah, I'm just going to ask you these questions. Yep, fine, done. One take wonders. And then other people literally want to run out of the room. They are shaking. But as you and I know, it's all in the edit. You can
It is.
And that's why another facet of now virtual is that you can pre-record but make it look live.
Yeah.
So that's another
Absolutely.
interesting way of delivering your message. And that can be really helpful because, you can cut away to video, to graphics, to, presentation content. You don't have to be like we are, just talking heads on a screen. And all of that can be done, even co-presenting and handoffs to other people. But you can pre-record all that and broadcast it as if it is a live event. So, there are ways around it. There are different methods to help people deliver that message. And again, it's all about who your audience are, how you're going to communicate, what's your messaging, what you're trying to communicate. So it's just finding the right way of doing that for whatever event it is, whether it's virtual, whether it's live. And because the other thing about live is, you can take a dislike to somebody. Again, when you're in the room and you're watching them, you think, oh, this guy irritates me. But that equally happens on virtual because, I don't know about you, but how many TV interviews have we seen over the past 3 months where you're fixated on somebody's curtains or the bookcase behind them and you're completely distracted from what they're talking about, or they're overly flamboyant in front of the camera. And this is a very small window. And if someone's flapping around like Kermit the Frog, you're then not listening to what they're saying because you're completely distracted. And as you say, on stage, a lot of that is diluted because you're taking in the whole performance.
If you're sat at the back, the person on the stage is very small. Even if they're on screen, they're still only a part of the actual overall set piece. Whereas with this, you've got a 16:9 window that you've got to try and pull everything into, but also make it very, very interesting to watch. So, trying to translate that feeling from a live event into virtual. So, video is fantastic. It breaks down barriers. It breaks down barriers globally, culturally. It surpasses language to a certain extent if we're using lots of animations and stuff. Video is just a worldwide communication tool, and I think it can talk to everybody. So thinking of that, let's briefly talk about this project that we did for this travel client. So we did a big multi-language, the actual numbers, because I think Nick, the editor, bless him, spent most of his time doing that, but actually that the whole project that we pulled together was huge. So talk a little bit about that project and what you had to do from a comms point of view to pull all that together.
This was communicating with the winners of an incentive from 27 countries, 13 languages, 82 couples. And what we've done over the years is we've done a kind of congratulations video as part of the communications piece. And that started off relatively simply, kind of destination highlights. This is where you're going. This is what you'll kind of experience. And because of the language thing, we didn't use voiceover and we didn't use, sort of captions on screen. It was very, very visual. Then we started to personalize that by using animation and putting their names on there. So congratulations, Fred and Wilma, on achieving, and then, the MD signature kind of thing. And it's snowballed. Each year we've done it, it's got more sophisticated. So then we started the messages that were then translated. So we added more. So it were then, dear friend Wilma, congratulations, looking forward to seeing you in wherever the destination was. And that had to be in their own language. So you're creating a master, then you're creating a language master, and then you're creating a personalized version from that language master. So the most complicated ones we did earlier in the year was then we started adding interviews with people from the destination, from like the hotel manager to the doorman, all saying, you know, looking forward to welcoming you. So we then had to caption that in and translate it and create 13 language versions, and then personalize it with the people's name. And then the country managers were so excited when they saw this that they wanted to add their own personal messaging. So, you know, this built up, but that's the beauty now of using video as communication, because, you know, that's all doable. So at the end of it, we had 82 individual videos, each created for, you know, based on a master. So there was like a master version, but then there was country versions, language versions, and then down to the individual. But it's massively impactful because that goes to that individual and his partner or her partner saying, congratulations, you've won. That's something they can share on. So, you know, it's what we call bragging rights, isn't it? You know, where people have won, they've achieved, they want their peers and their colleagues and all the rest of it to know this is something that, you know, they can use to publicize and show, like, you know, look what I've achieved. I'm going to get to go to, you know, wherever. So yeah, it's fantastically powerful, and that's something they then keep, because that's something they can look back on as an achievement. So yeah, and for incentives in particular, we use a lot of video. I can't imagine launching an incentive without a video. We just wouldn't do it, because nothing packs a punch. And especially, as you say, if we've got, and we do have clients with, you know, an audience spanning multiple countries and multiple languages, you don't have to add words. You've just got great music, beautiful, you know, imagery of the destination to sell it. And they see that and they want to be a part of it. So yeah, it's a fantastic medium for getting that excitement and engagement.
Yeah, and in situations like that where you're creating an incentive video with no words or captions or voiceover, and it's just images and music, that's the kind of content that speaks globally. That's the type of content that breaks down those barriers of language, of wherever you live in the world. You know, it breaks all of that down, because that same emotional response is being, like, you know, pulled out from the viewers. I just think this stuff is really, really interesting. And I think now that the situation that we're in right now has made us all think more about what, you know, what that client did is essentially not just think about their end audience, like what you were saying, you know, thinking about who's it going to go to first, but they've drilled that down further and said, well, instead of just generalizing the audience and pushing out the message, this is actually, you've broken it down to territory specific, which is like another layer down. But the success rate and the impact has been huge, because, as you say, would people in Greece or Spain or France keep a generic video with just music? Maybe. Are they more likely to keep a personalized, language specific piece with the people from their country talking from the hotels, from, you know, more likely, yes. But then obviously once you've hit that ceiling, you then need to break through it the next year and do something else again and keep, you know, you can't bring it back down again, because the expectation is there.
It's got more complicated every year. We had another layer of poor Nick. I think he must hate me, because I'm like, it's that time of year again.
Yeah, I'll just book all my holiday, I think. Sandra, look, we've got a few minutes left. I'd love for you to summarize, if you can, your three tips of how to effectively communicate with video. I know we've spoken a lot, you know, through the last kind of 40 minutes, but just in a summary, what three tips would you give to people watching if you're producing a communications plan?
I think it's, regardless of whether it's video, it's any communications plan, to be honest with you. When you're looking at communication strategy, the key thing is you start with your audience. You really have to understand your audience. You have to understand what kind of tone of voice to talk to them in, where they are, so you know what media you're going to use, and what's the best way to communicate with them, because that is very, very different, and one size does not fit all. So it goes back to that personalization. Understand your audience, understand where your audience is, so you can communicate with them, and the way to speak to them, how they like to receive their information. We're part of a self-serve generation. You want to know something, you go look for it. So you need to be where they look, where they live.
Yep.
I think the other thing is, you've got to, if you're using video in particular, why? What's the point of it? What need does it fulfill? It's not like saying, well, yeah, we'll do a video, but why? Where does that fit into a
Which you hear a
communication
lot.
plan? Yeah. Oh, we'll do a video. Okay, why?
Yeah.
Well, because video is sexy, it's exciting. Yes, but what purpose does it fulfill? So you have to look at your comm strategy overall, and where will video fit? Where does it give you your best impact, your bang for your buck? So how does video fit in? Because a communication plan, as I said earlier, has to be a continuous journey. So understand where it's most impactful, where you can best use it. And that could be in 2 or 3 places. We know very well we'll use it pre-event, on site, as part of the delivery, and post-event. So, it's where does it work for you? What have you got the budget to do? How can you make it work positively? And I think the final thing is, I think because people are so used to, I can pick up my phone and I can video something, and anyone can create a video, and I don't know how many gazillion uploads YouTube has a day, but you still have to craft a story. It goes back to, what are your objectives? What are you trying to say with this? What do you want to communicate with it? And how do I do that? So this is where your creativity runs riot. This is where, are you talking to real people? Is it vox pops? Are you using actors? Is it scripted? Are you using animation? That all important storyboard. What is the story? And that's where you've got to really, really put your time and effort and creativity, is crafting that story. So, whereas I used to do a lot of copywriting, now it's more, okay, how do we storyboard this? How do we tell the story? And that's really important with video. I think because it's accessible doesn't mean it's good. So, just because you can shoot it on your phone, doesn't make you Steven Spielberg. So it's got to go back to the planning and the telling of the story. So I would say those are the 3 things you really need to consider.
Yeah, fantastic, Sandra, fantastic. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time today, for your insights. It's been a real pleasure to have you on this. Obviously, working with you is always a pleasure as well, but having you on
thanks,
the podcast to share, no, not a problem at all, sharing your insights and your experience. There's a lot to be learned during this time about how we communicate with our audience. And I think, everything you've said today, there's a lot that people can learn from what you've said today and from your experience. So, thanks for sharing it with us and for taking your time out.
No, it's a pleasure. Always a joy to work with you, Jamie. Thank you.
No worries.
I really enjoyed it.
Good. I'm glad. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, Sandra. We'll catch up soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, there you have it, guys. Sandra Collins from BCD Meetings and Events, a lovely colleague of mine, communications expert, loves video, loves the written word. I think you'll agree that this episode has been really informative. There's loads of useful and interesting nuggets of information there that we can all take on, even if we're not running a business and we're just talking to people over Zoom, or it makes us think about how we're kind of presenting ourselves and how we want to deliver a message, and I think it's just fantastic stuff there. Hopefully stuff that we can all take forward with us once we're past this crazy time. If you've enjoyed the episode today, please do consider subscribing to the channel. It just helps me and the Video Lowdown get pushed out to more people, and popping up in the little recommended tab on YouTube is always the goal. Feel free to check out the other interviews. We're up to number 8 now, and we've got 3 or 4 booked in ahead till the end of July so far. So they're coming in thick and fast, which is fantastic. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your support. Do leave some comments and some likes if you've enjoyed today. Subscribe, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your week. And I'll see you next Wednesday at 10.